All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to our February Pennsylvania Student-Centered Learning Network meeting. My name is Tim Leister, and I am just one of the fabulous members of our committee who organizes today. And we would love to get a feel for where you're calling in from today. We understand there's been some weather around the state that might make it a little bit difficult for you to get into work today or to get online. So we really appreciate your efforts in being here today. So again, in the chat this morning, if you wouldn't mind just checking in, we're always curious to see where everybody is zooming in from this morning. So again, my name is Tim Leister. I'm an instructional technology specialist here at IU 13. And again, I am just one member of the team that helps to put this together. As you can see on the screen here, this is the leadership team that's going to be facilitating our discussions today. They're also most likely probably the point of contacts for you, for your IU locally, around the idea of student-centered learning. So if you don't see your IU represented on the screen, please check out the link that is on today's agenda, and you can find who your point of contact is around student-centered learning. So again, we always kind of want to get a feel for, who is with us today. So we want to start out just with a very quick poll. As you can see up there on the screen, we're curious if you're joining us for the first time or if perhaps you've attended several of our sessions before. We want to recognize those that are here with us for the first time, and we welcome you. We hope you'll continue to come back with us. And again, for those of you that have been with us before, welcome back. We're excited to have you here. So it looks like we have a good mix of about, 3/4 of us who have been here already, and maybe about a quarter of us who are joining for the first time. So it's great to again have you all with us today. So since we do have new folks joining us for the first time, we always like to review a little bit about what the Pennsylvania Student-Centered Learning Community of Practice is all about. And you can see some of our mission and vision that you see on there. And part of this community of practice is these statewide meetings that we have. We have these quarterly, and it's a chance for us to connect with all of you and to share some of the amazing work that's happening around the state. And we do that through some breakout room discussions. We do that with some featured speakers and some district shares that we're excited to be able to have going forward again with us today. So we have kind of centered and focused this year's meetings around the wonderful resource that we have called the Pennsylvania Student-Centered Learning Blueprint. So we've been, again, sharing this out with the network very often, and you'll find as you go through in here that there are components that we have built into the five components of the blueprint that we've really focused this year's meetings on. So we started out back in September focusing on component number 1 with administration and leadership. We transitioned in November over to the teaching and learning component. And again, for each of our meetings, we're focusing on a different one of our components. So here again is just a little bit of a nutshell is what they are. As you start to do work to look at ways that you can start to transform your instruction to more of a student-centered learning approach within your district or your LEA, these are the areas that we think are really important for you to focus on and look at. So that just gives a little bit of a nutshell of what those different areas are. And for today, we're going to be focusing on that component about community outreach. So we feel it's really, an important piece to bring the community into your districts, to share the amazing resources that are available, and to prepare your students for the world that surrounds them. So many of our students, as they leave our schools, stay within our communities, and many of our students will be living and working in our communities. So we want to make them a part of what happens within our schools at all times. So we're really excited about the speakers and the district share folks that we have with us today who can really speak to this area on community outreach. So to get us in that mindset, and focused on this, I'm going to ask Aaron to walk us through a quick little activity. Aaron?
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim. So today we're grounding ourselves in the community outreach component of the student-centered learning blueprint, as Tim was saying. And I have this phrase here, a sentence starter, if you will. Authentic community outreach means. I want you to take just a little bit of time to think about, what does authentic community outreach mean to you? Some things to think about. Is it a tool? And if it is a tool, what makes that authentic? Is it something that you are doing, something that you are achieving? So think about that for a few seconds. You're going to put your answer in the chat, but not yet. I'm going to give you a few more seconds to think. All right. So hopefully you have an idea of what authentic community outreach means to you, whether it's a phrase, simple word. And I'd love for you to put that into the chat and hit enter. Okay. So as we are putting our thoughts into the chat, I would love for you to also to go back and either like or heart or add an emoji reply to ones that really stick out to you. We see a lot of great answers. I'm seeing collaboration, connections, rather than just achieving quick wins, meaningful partnerships, listening to what the community needs and wants, sharing, a lot of partnerships and teamwork, human connections. Excellent. So as you're scanning, like, these are words and ideas that are repeating. We see the partnership, listening, the trust, student voice, ongoing relationships, talking about that community expertise. A lot of these are built around relationships and structures. It isn't necessarily about informing the community, it's about building and learning with the community. So just take a few seconds to think to yourself. I don't need a response for this, but just to guide our thought process for today, which of these is strongest in your system right now? And which of these do you think needs the most growth? Excellent. So Tim, I'm going to pass that back on to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Aaron. Love to see those responses come in to the chat, and please continue to scan them and to go back there. And as Aaron suggested, maybe give an emoji, thumbs up or something to those that really speak to you. All right. So for the next part of our meeting, I want to introduce my colleague, who's also the lead of our Pennsylvania Student-Centered Learning Community of Practice, Ken Zimmerman, who's going to speak a little bit about our resources group and also introduce our featured speaker today. Ken.
All right, thanks, Tim. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with all of you this morning and to see so many of you join us. Thank you for giving us your time. And as we're talking about community today, one of the things that comes to mind is a reminder of why PASCL exists. So, PASCL, as a Pennsylvania student-centered learning community of practice, is a group that is formed to come together for your community to be able to help provide you with any resources and strategies that you need, whether that's human capital through your IU, whether that's resources and materials through our Pennsylvania Student-Centered Learning Blueprint and Navigator tools to be able to help you look at 5 components, particularly when you're looking at your system and deciding on how to continually grow, build, improve, adapt student-centered learning within your district. So we're a community of practice that is together for you, and we want to remind you of resources that are available for you to be able to access. So we do have a resources group on OER Commons, and the link is going to be posted in the chat for you. We would love for you to take an opportunity to actually join the group. And that will require you then to be able to create an account in OER Commons, which is completely free. We use OER Commons because of our resources and making sure that the resources that we provide are open, accessible resources for anyone across the Commonwealth and nation for that matter to be able to access and utilize and revamp and redo and to be able to pull from and add to. So it's a collaborative group. So within our PASCL resources group, that's where all of our main documentations and resources are for you. So as members continually build resources, they are going to be built in this OER Commons for you. That's where the blueprint lives, the navigator tool, our stories of impact, and any other future marketing materials that we use for you will be in this group. So again, we would love for you to take a moment to be able to join that group and joining our community as we continually focus on community today to be able to serve your needs. Now, remember that each IU has an IU point of contact to be able to help support you. So as you're working through the blueprint or you're working through some plans, feel free to connect directly to your IU. And as you're developing resources or you're looking for resources that might not even yet exist, please reach out to your IU point of contact to let them know because it's resources that we can build and put in OER Commons for you to be able to access. So feel free to send that out to anyone within your districts and your LEAs to be able to join our resource group. So with that being said, as we continue to focus on outreach this morning, we're really excited to be able to introduce you to a spotlight speaker this morning, Mr. Gregg Behr. So Gregg is executive director of the Grable Foundation since 2006 and is a father and a children's advocate. For 2 decades, he has led Remake Learning, a network of educators, technologists, designers, and makers he founded in 2007 to international renown. Among the foremost examples of learning ecosystems, Remake Learning has turned heads everywhere from the White House to the World Economic Forum for its efforts to ignite children's curiosity, encourage creativity, and foster joy and belonging in schools, libraries, museums, and other sites of learning. And man, when I think about our definition of student-centered learning and why we're here and what we're focused on, that makes me really excited and focusing in particularly on igniting wonder and that curiosity. So in 2023, Hundreds named Mr. Behr as its Global Champion of the Year for inspiring learning innovation across continents. He's an advisor to the Brookings Institution, PBS Kids, and the Fred Rogers Institute, and has been honored by the White House, the Disruptor Foundation, ISTE, AASA with national awards as an innovator and thought leader in education and policy leadership. So with that being said, you can see what it is an honor for Gregg to be able to join our PASCL community and share some time with us this morning. So Gregg, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ken. Truly, to you, to Tim, to Aaron, this is my honor. I'm so excited to be with this group this morning. And as I share my screen, why don't you take a cup of coffee, drink of coffee, everyone, because we're going to run through these next 15 minutes. My task is to stir your imagination as you think about goal number 5 that you all have for this extraordinary community. As Ken introduced, I'm Gregg. I, like you, wear lots of different hats, including as a dad of 2 public school girls. And the hat that I want to turn to briefly this morning to set context is Remake Learning, which Ken just described. Remake Learning, as he described, is this now 20-year network that has been connecting schools with museums, libraries, after-school centers, early learning centers, creative industries, campuses of higher education, all across the learning landscape. As we think about the learning landscape for our kids, recognizing that no one organization can transform those authentic learning experiences as you're already achieving and aiming to achieve in more significant ways. We know that we work better when we work together. And we have to work together if we're going to realize the types of shifts that we want for our young people in and out of school and all of the places that they might learn, such that we tap into community strengths and recognize that learning landscape and make real then these extraordinary core learning moments that activate learning in the powerful ways that we know they can. Because ultimately, we're thinking about every single learner and her potential and her possibilities and the gift that we have in our schools every year of those 990 hours of instruction. And for us in Western Pennsylvania, and I suspect all across this Commonwealth, strangely, some of this comes right back to our favorite ever neighbor, Mr. Rogers. And I mention Mr. Rogers because together with Ryan Rudzeski, I had the great opportunity to co-author this book that some of you know well, When You Wonder, You're Learning. And I mention it because Fred left for us some blueprints that if we dig into his work and as adults look back under the hood, it doesn't ruin the magic. It actually makes us realize what an amazing educator Fred was and how, in fact, he built authentic learning experiences through the medium through which he was teaching. And he recognized way before so many of us the importance of that neighborhood, of that broader learning landscape. Which brings us right back to Remake Learning, because for 20 years we've been invoking the legacy of Fred and think about that Fred method. And as we've thought about community outreach and partnerships among schools and all sorts of learning sites, we've identified some principles that we use. And this morning I'm going to focus on one of them that seems so very Fred-like, and that is meeting the neighbors. Because it was Fred who said, in every neighborhood, all across our country, all across our Commonwealth, there are good people insisting on a good start for the young and doing something about it. And so when we think about our kindergartners and our middle schoolers and our high schoolers, how are we connecting this learning landscape? And I want to add to the things that you put into the chat. And I love the comments you had about listening and about engagement. And I want to add the simple question of how might we? That when we think about community partnerships and authentic learning, we do best in so many ways when we just ask, how might we? So I want you to jump on the trolley this morning. I want to share with you 20 simple examples. I could dive into 143 amazing examples. I don't have time to do that. And this is just meant to stir your imagination because these are 20 examples whereby educators or schools themselves ask that simple question, how might we, to activate authentic learning experiences. It was a first grade teacher who connected with an entrepreneur and said, how might we develop digital math blocks equivalent to the books that we have to support early literacy training? How do we think about numeracy in new ways? A teacher who simply asked, how might we? Or districts that said, how might we enrich our STEM learning program with the most advanced robotics teaching possible by turning to Carnegie Mellon University? And turning to Carnegie Mellon University, whether we happen to be next door or hundreds of miles away, how can we connect to their centers and units, whether we're rural, suburban, rich, or poor? How do we take advantage of world-class resources right here in our Commonwealth? An elementary school teacher who teaches science, who said, how might I enrich my classroom? And decided to work with a game designer who lived in his community, who also happened to be with a local company that builds rides for places like Walt Disney World, and said, how might I turn my classroom into a different sort of space that lights me up and then might light my kids up as we think about science training? A district that said, how might we work with the university lab to enrich our classrooms with embedded learning and gaming in a way that allows us to teach predicates or grammar in some fundamentally different ways, not replacing what we're doing in the classroom, but supplementing it in remarkable ways. How might we think differently about digital storytelling by reaching out to a youth radio station and bringing their skills and capabilities into our ELA classes? How might we work with a symphony, in fact, a symphony far afield in Michigan, to reimagine and even create the possibility of a strings program that we don't have by simply taking advantage of the 3D printers in our classroom spaces and starting to print stringed instruments at $50 a pop? How might we take literacy education beyond our schools and into the community? And now many of your own districts host this event called Literacy Under the Lights, imagined by these two teachers, Jen and Tracy, who said, I love to read. And how can I enrich reading in our community? And decided, let's take advantage of the football field during one of those away games, ask the local barber to come and read about barbering, ask the music teacher to come and read about music education, and invite hundreds of families to the football field on a lovely Friday night, because how might we enrich literacy across our community? How might we reach out to aquaculture experts and conservationists to think differently about our science education? How might we reach out to some scientists and roboticists to integrate robotics into ELA instruction through a project that they created together called Robot Diaries? How might a kindergarten teacher think about teaching the skills of executive function and struggle, and also ultimately eliciting wonder at an early age by working with some artists and engineers to reimagine some of the instruction that she does in her classroom? How might a middle school maintain the spark that girls have in science by reaching out to local companies whose core business is drone technology to introduce drone technology classes into our classroom setting that we could otherwise never do? How might we reach out to local universities and technologists to create the sort of conversations among our young people and their caregivers in some powerful ways in our learning settings? How might we reach out to horticulture therapists to think differently about mental health therapy in our schools? How might we reach out to local businesses like cybersecurity to create new learning spaces and enrich our curriculum and opportunities for our kids? How might we, because we have amazing project-based learning, reach out to farmers in our community to design an agriculturally rich and agriculturally based and agriculturally connected project-based learning curricula K through 6? How might we reach out to our small arts district and our little town far north of Pittsburgh to create a showcase of student artwork in a way that enriches our community, but also allows the community to see the possibilities for our kids? How might we reach out to local healthcare systems to think about new types of spaces that give our kids opportunities, places and spaces to calm down, to reset and recenter themselves? How might we reach out to local business owners, the guy who owns the laundromat, the woman who works at the corner store, and invite them to be part of the bus line in our everyday start to school to demonstrate the rich connections that our school has to its community, and for the faculty and kids to see that the people who live and work in our community are connected in a simple way as inviting them to be part of the bus line? And in great big thinking, how might we reimagine a closed hospital that's in our school district boundaries and reimagine it as a site for learning and an extension of what happens not only in our school district, but in our community? Or how might we, if we have the great opportunity to design a new school, or maybe even just a nook in a classroom space, call upon museum exhibit designers at, say, the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh to work at the forefront in advance of our architects and designers to imagine what our spaces might look like? And then I think about Remake Learning Days, in which so many of you take part, and we have such a great big opportunity across this Commonwealth. Because when I think about partnerships and community outreach, Remake Learning Days is this remarkable expression of thousands of events whereby schools and our community partners are saying, how might we? How might we activate authentic learning experiences that connect our schools to our kids, to our parents, families, and caregivers? And all of these little ideas, all of which is meant to just stir your imagination, is ultimately about creating an atmosphere. Because it takes us right back to Fred Rogers. A journalist once turned to Fred and said, "Fred, what are you doing with this program? You've created more than 900 programs." And wonderfully, Fred said, "I'm creating an atmosphere." And that's what you all do. And it's what the principles articulate. And when we think about those principles and we think about all of these little examples, some of which are so simple and some of which connect right to our community, whether we have those resources, whether we're far afield from all sorts of assets or not. So much of it is about making it just normal. This is just how we do things. This is how we think about things. This is how we think about our department's curricular design. This is how I think about my classroom. This is how we think about our district strategic planning. And I want to acknowledge, yes, right? Like it takes permission. It takes the permission of administrators, superintendents, assistant superintendents, curriculum directors, principals who say yes. And in all of those 20 examples I shared, there was someone who said yes, but it was equally incumbent upon the educators to say, how might we? How might we think about this learning landscape where kids are only in our schools 14 to 20% of their waking time, and how do we connect it in a way that activates and enriches our learning simply by asking, how might we?
Moving forward, it's just continuing to ask those questions of how could we, how might we, what happens if?
The future is here, the dream is happening, and we just have to jump on board because they're ready to go. That's it.
Hope you all can hear that. At its bottom line, that video conveyed the simple thing with which I want to leave you this morning. The importance, as we think about community partnerships, of simply asking, how might we? What if? Because when we ask those questions and we do it together with our partners and we listen to our communities and our parents, families, and caregivers, asking how might we can yield to extraordinary things. Because it turns out when you wonder, and when you wonder as an adult, you are in fact learning. Today, you're going to get a chance to hear from Dr. Woods. They've asked how might we, they've asked what if in the Alliquipa School District. When you meet next time, you're going to meet with Dr. Laura Jacob from the California Air District. She'll take you into a deep dive example of a district where they too have asked how might we, what if. And at its core of those community partnerships is asking those simple questions. And it's what makes learning come alive across our learning landscape.
All right. Thank you so much, Gregg. We appreciate your words of wisdom this morning. I think we can all agree with the takeaway for today with how might we, what if. So again, thank you for your words of wisdom. We're going to ask Gregg to stay on for a little bit too. As we head into some breakout rooms, we want you to think of maybe a question or two that you might ask for Gregg. So when we come back from that break, you might have a question or so. We can do a little bit of a Q&A with Gregg. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Kendi, who's going to lead us through what we're going to do for our next few minutes. Kendi?
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much again to Gregg. That was awesome. And in the spirit of sharing all the ways that we are asking what if, we know this is happening across Pennsylvania. So we wanted to give you an opportunity to have conversations with others about what are you doing? How are you connecting with your community? So if you look at our agenda, we're going to put you into breakout rooms of 4 to 5 people. And then we have a collective Padlet set up here. So if you click on the link right in the agenda, and I believe we're going to pop it in the chat too, it will open up. If you've not used Padlet before, you just press the plus sign and you can add a post to that section. So depending on if you're in the K to 5 range, the 6 to 8 range, the 9 to 12, or maybe you're more than one, that's okay. Or maybe you don't fall in any of those categories. Also totally fine, but just pop a post on here and let us know, like, who are you engaging with and what is the impact of that engagement? Like, what are you doing with them? And then I put bonus points on there if you're willing to include your name and your email for a follow-up. So if there's someone that sees your post and they think, oh my gosh, I want to hear more about that, and they know how to get a hold of you to make that connection, you'd be a champion for that work and we would love it. So again, all you have to do is push that plus sign. And then you can type right in here into the box. I'm not going to publish it, but you just push publish and it'll go into the category where you clicked the plus sign. So you'll be able to go in, have these conversations, share with people, but then if you don't mind, pop it onto the Padlet as well. That way we can really be sharing it across the state, not just with the people in your breakout rooms. Can we answer any questions that we have about our breakout rooms? Tim, can you remind me, how long do we have in our breakout rooms?
Yeah, we're going to have about 7 or 8 minutes or so in our breakout rooms. And again, we're going to do it random. So hopefully you'll be mixed with some people within our community here and just have a quick conversation. And as you're talking, as Kendi said, continue to add to that. And then as we come out of our breakout rooms, we'll have an opportunity again to maybe look at some of those posts and have some Q&A with Gregg. So are those breakout rooms ready to go? And if so, thank you, Melissa. Go ahead and pop those up and you'll be assigned a random breakout room and we'll see you back here in the main room in about 7 minutes.
Give everyone, you've got about 39 seconds. You can always tell when they're having good conversations when people aren't hopping right out of their breakout rooms, which is awesome. Thank you to everyone that posted a Padlet. If you didn't get to do that yet, you have 17 seconds. You can do it still. You have time. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you were having some great conversations in your breakout rooms. Up on the screen, you can see we have our Padlet with, if in case you didn't get to touch on something in your breakout room, and you can definitely continue to add to this. If you're someone out there watching this recording tomorrow, perhaps, definitely please add to our Padlet with any examples of community connections that you're making in your district. As we were kind of moving through, we were very heavy K-5 and 9 to 12, and I was getting a little nervous about our 6 to 8. But I'm really excited to see that we have some examples in there now for 6 to 8. So lots of awesome ideas. Thank you so much to everyone who posted and to those who also have included some contact information. So if you're seeing something on here and you're thinking, you know what, I want to know more about that, if they put their contact information there, definitely reach out and ask your questions because these are things that can be replicated across Pennsylvania. I see a lot of things about adopting schools, like having local businesses adopt schools, different panels, supports for our students with autism. So many awesome leads on here. So definitely take the opportunity to dig through this when you have time and add to it if you have more to add to it. All right. And I am going to hand it over to Ken.
Thanks, Kendi. So now we want to be able to get an opportunity to reconnect with Gregg. Thinking through, are there any burning questions that came to your mind while Gregg was sharing and Gregg was inspiring us, as well as when you were in your breakout rooms, did a question arise? So we'll give you a moment to be able to post that question in the chat, and we'll give a little time here for Gregg to answer that. So starting things off with Gregg, the first question we have for you, Gregg, is who is one community partner that you think is super valuable, but oftentimes overlooked?
Great question. And my immediate answer is parents, families, and caregivers. I shared at least 3 examples of moments when school districts or educators simply thought about parents in slightly different ways. Literacy under the lights, thinking about the skills that someone could bring to a literacy moment. That village example from Clairton, thinking about the residents who are parents, families, and caregivers being part of the bus line, just thinking about parents and families in a slightly different way. That Butler example of ag-based, project-based learning, looking around the community, who lives there, who are the parents and caregivers in those schools, a lot of them farmers or ag-related industries. I love the example of the Northgate School District. I didn't share this one. Northgate, probably like your districts, has a makerspace. And they looked around their community and said, you know what, so many of our parents are plumbers and they're restaurant chefs and they worked HVAC. Like, could we do the simple hand-holding of getting them credentialed so that they can come into our schools during or after the school day and be part of our maker learning activities, whether it's the specials or integrated with math or ELA. And so they developed this ingenious Parents as Makers program that allows parents and caregivers to come into the schools bringing their full selves and the skills and mindsets and dispositions that they have. And there's an important PS there, Ken. It's remembering the self-interests of the partner. And sometimes that's hard to think about beyond parents, families, and caregivers, because we think about adopting a school, and these are great things, but it's really important to do that intense listening to understand what is the self-interest of this business or this museum or this library. Like, why did they want to partner with a school? Because they have their own self-interest for doing so. It's not merely altruistic. And so understanding the self-interest of your potential partner, whether it is that parent, family, or caregiver, or that local business, is critical in the community engagement process.
It makes me think about that stakeholder and those who have stake in the system in which they're currently living. Danny reminds us grandparents are also, makers who would be part of that process and be amazing. And Danny said or asked, in what ways might other geographical regions benefit from the beautiful work you've ignited in southwestern Pennsylvania?
So first and foremost, I would say participate in Remake Learning Days. Right, we are so lucky how the Pennsylvania Department of Education, as well as the Ag Department and others, participate in Remake Learning Days. We have an opportunity between May 1 and May 23 for schools and community sites all across this Commonwealth to host those events. And I say that because, a singular event, one, it's you plant a flag like, we're going to do this, this is going to happen, so that there's momentum building to something. But oftentimes it's that experience of having hosted that event, of made that connection, that starts to then say like, well, how might we? Like, how might we work during the entire course of the next year? What would that look like? Or how might you be part of a special curriculum that we're doing at school? Events are extraordinary things, and they're often springboards to something else. I would also mention, if you go to remakelearningdays.org, remakelearning.org, there are all sorts of freely available publications, films, infographics, all of which have Creative Commons licensing. I would say take those, read those, use those, share those, use them in the strategic planning of your district, use them as you're developing or redeveloping your graduate profile. Take advantage of the free resources by which research scientists and others have documented some of the work here and elsewhere across the Commonwealth or around the world. We do best when we steal ideas. It's a sort of like the festival of ideas stolen, right? Like, who's doing world-class work and how do we bring it, whether it's to Pottsville or to Erie or to Brownsville, Pennsylvania?
It's a great reminder of we're stronger together than we are on our own. And that's what our community at PASCL represents, bringing us to be together to be able to share resources with one another and share site visits with one another. And as you say, Remake Learning, some districts said, I can't do one more thing, Greg, I just can't. And we remind them, these are things that you might already be doing that you could highlight easily through Remake Learning Days in May. So that's a definite encouragement. Last question to be able to move
and Ken,
on.
let me just interject about that. We say all the time around here, just one thing, right? It's those moonshots, those big ideas, they're hard, they can be paralyzing. And so what's the one little bet you can make? If you feel like you don't have permission, like, what's the one little bet that you can make in your classroom Or if you're the principal, like what's the one little bet you can make in your school? Because ultimately it's the compilation of those hundreds and thousands of little bets that actually realizes systemic change. I'm sorry, Ken.
No, excellent. So the last question is something on a lot of people's minds when they're just not, if they don't just know the business community very well, they want to connect with a local business community, but organization, but they don't know anyone there. What would be a way that they should get started?
Honestly, it's just showing up, right? Because again, whether it's the business community or the libraries and the museums, they all have their own self-interests. They have their own socials. They have their own networking associations. They have their own Zoom meetings like this. And so I would just say find out what's happening when and brave yourself and just show up and be the stranger in the room and try and connect. We try and do that at Remake Learning. Part of the secret sauce is organizing all sorts of, honestly, socials and happy hours or events called Meet Your Neighbors, right? And these are just designed to be social settings such that an entrepreneur meets a first grade teacher, a high school English teacher meets a roboticist, right? Just creating those spaces where people start to connect because it's in this semblance of relationships that build and build trust that actually these things end up happening. So, for the introverts among us, I would say be brave and just show up where they are, because then they'll start to show up where you are.
Awesome. Well, Gregg, thank you so much, folks. You can keep putting questions in the chat if you would like, and we'll capture them and send them on to Gregg as time goes on. But Gregg, we really thank you for your time today and helping get us started in this vital component of student-centered learning. So thank you, Gregg. We enjoy it.
Thank you. I'm gonna stick around because I'm just I love this group. I love what you're doing. It's just impressive what's happening across this Commonwealth. So I want to learn.
Great. Thank you very much. And now we get to turn it over to Sam to be able to move us into the next part of our agenda with the school district visit.
Perfect. Thank you, Ken. It is my pleasure to spotlight the Alliquipa School District and Dr. Philip Woods, the superintendent, Dr. Jen D'Amico, Director of Pupil Services, and Mr. Ronell Hurd, the junior senior high school principal, and their partnership with the company Heinz. Dr. D'Amico did get called to something else last minute. She's unable to join us, but she still deserves a ton of credit for the work she did. Alliquipa is a small school district located within Beaver County, and the surrounding area is a very close-knit community. So this partnership with Heinz was able to give students national exposure, job training, and career opportunities that they may not have otherwise been able to get. So thank you for being with us today, Dr. Woods, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you at this time.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Thumbs up. Okay.
Yep, all good.
So I'm going to share my screen, and Mr. Taylor kind of gave you a little pre-shadow of the Alliquipa School District. Can you see my opening slide there?
Yep,
Right. Okay.
we're good.
All right. So when Mr. Taylor presented this opportunity to share our experience, we went through a couple different opportunities or rounds of how we're working with the community. And we settled on this one just because this one was kind of the most polarizing one, but I don't want to diminish several of the other partners that we work with in the community in terms of nonprofits, church groups, community groups, and foundations. But again, this partnership with Heinz kind of stuck out. So here I always start with a little version of our mission. You look at these mission statements. Some of these mission statements are just huge and drawn out. We simplified ours basically to say we want to create productive citizens for a global society by fostering student success and a relevant and challenging learning community. And the way to do that is you have to know the pulse of your community. You have to know the pulse of your children, and you have to tailor the program to what their interests and needs are. So here, this slide I just took talking about we're 4.5 square miles, and it's probably even less than that because most of it is hills and woods and creeks. This slide here, I would say we have around 1,100 students now, 80 teachers, 4 administrators, and I believe in the power of support staff to help our teachers in the classrooms. Our student-teacher ratio is fairly low. It's 11-1, and that plays in our favor. So as we discussed here, the Alliquipa, we call it the High School to Hines program. So if you think back a few years ago, the Steelers had a partnership with Hines of the naming of their stadium. So that partnership broke. Myself and Coach Warfield reached out to executives from Hines to say, hey, if the Steelers don't have any more use for you, the Alliquipa School District would gladly welcome you into our neighborhood because we've played at Hines Field almost every year that you've been there. And it started with a conversation. And in talking about the conversation, it ended up being a $1.3 million donation towards a new academic athletic center that we're currently building. And when that happened, there was a lot of discussion about, why are we not focusing on education? Why are we focusing on athletics? But the whole relationship has blossomed into more than athletics. So we talked with the executive from Hines and we came up with the idea that how could we make this partnership flourish? How can we get more out of this partnership than just the building, just the football field, just a flash fry on social media? So we got together, myself and Dr. Demico, and we had this program that was called Partner Up. Partner Up was a thing we started. It was with PNC, where they would do several weeks of mentorship, several weeks of training. And then at the end of that process, PNC would offer them jobs. So we kind of modeled that program when we did our High School to Hines program. So in there, we talked about building trust, understanding the dynamics of being a professional, understanding of what it takes to operate the different job responsibilities. And through round and round, we visited sites in Ohio. There was 2 sites in Ohio, and then there was 1 in Virginia. And the goal of the partnership was to prepare our students for a high demanding and make a family sustaining career. We had a lot of students that graduated high school through this partnership, through this program, came out of high school making over $50,000 a year with salary, benefits, PTO, and now a vested member of the Kraft Heinz program. We talked about aligning education goals with real life needs, and again, strengthening local and regional talent pipelines. And then we wanted to ensure that this was given additional motivation for students to graduate and move on beyond high school. And when we looked at the target audience, I tried to get with the CTC and we tried to go through the plumbers union, but that test was very rigorous and some of our students had a hard time getting through the exam. And I'll be honest with you, we didn't have one high school student that successfully did it. I had a student that graduated that we had him come back and he was able to get through it, but he was more, I want to say more in tune with understanding what it took to be a professional, but the high school kids, it was just above them. So when we designed this program, we did the mentorship, we did the on-hands experience. Here's an example of one of the executives traveled to the district. So it was kind of like they would have an executive come to the district, do a full day workshop, and then after learning about the plant, they would take a trip to the plant. That's where Mr. Hurd came in. He was vital in chaperoning those events and help guiding the students as they navigated through the internship. And we had to pick an audience, but I didn't want to limit it. So we offered it to every senior in the whole group, but we weren't targeting kids that were thinking or planning to go to college. But ultimately, in the end, We did get a couple students who had the career mind state that they were going to college, but then after sitting down talking to them, they didn't have a plan on how they were going to pay for college. So we looked at this as an avenue to where you can go through this program, earn a salary, and then pay towards your education and start through a community. So here you see co-design delivered with Kraft Heinz executive, blending classroom preparation and industry-led training, hands-on experience. And let me go to my next one. As I stated, we opened it to all seniors. There was actually some kids who actually went through the program and completed all the tasks, but wouldn't accept the offer because they were afraid to move away. So that was one of the designs that I want to work on this year, is to make sure that the students aren't afraid to branch out, because like I said, Alliquipa is a small town. There's not much here in terms of careers. You can get a couple jobs, but in terms of a career, I need them to get over that phobia or that fear of branching out. And again, we use this program to emphasize some of our graduation requirements, readiness skills, expectations on attendance, professionalism, and then also when you went through the different plants, there were different jobs that you could apply for. So there was choice in it. Again, there's such a picture in the corner there. After going through the training, we had a full presentation, gave them awards, gave them the job offer, gave them the pretty much the, I would say, the contract. And it was very rewarding to see the children have that sense of accomplishment after they went through this rigorous training process. And the funny thing is, when we took some of those plant trips, they had to be at the school at 6:30 a.m. And often days it's hard to get a kid to get to school at 7:30 for a regular day, but we never had a kid miss a bus. We never had a kid miss a trip. And they were just so excited and eager to be a part of this opportunity. And again, at the completion, they were offered full-time positions, benefits, paid time off. The program offered them a moving stipend to relocate, and then also a signing bonus if they completed X amount of months, that they received another bonus. So the skills that the students gained, I don't want to read through all of these, but the manufacturing and quality control, the safety compliance was huge. All the kids had to pass a drug test to get hired. Time management, that was one thing that we found out, is that, okay, in school, you go to school for your 7.5 hours, then you go home to mom and dad, or mom, grandma, whoever, and then you may go to work, or you may play a sport. So we had to think about these kids in terms of, okay, they're going to do their 8-hour shift, but what are they going to do for the rest of their time? So we had some conversations about self-monitoring and responsibility, independent living, budget and finance, and just self-monitoring, self-pride. And that was something that we caught on the end, but this time we're going to build it into it as we go, because again, there was some students and parents that were reluctant because the fear of the unknown. It was almost to the point where the opportunity was too good to be true that they couldn't believe it. And then when you see the neighborhood that the kids live in, they live in a gated community, it's a plush condo style apartment. As you see the kids go on, all the kids have now purchased vehicles. The kids have transferred their address to Winchester, so their IDs represent. So there's some days when the plant shuts down due to holidays or maybe a malfunction, that they have to have that identification so they can get unemployment if it extends that far. But again, they got vacation PTO they could use as well. Again, just talking about the partnership, we talked about the high demand. We talked about what a privilege it was. We talked about the clear expectations and accountability, and made it very clear what not only just to go through the program, but once you accept the job, what is it going to take to be sustained? And then the opportunities to grow within the organization, to go to the community college, to have profit sharing, to basically Hines will invest in them going back to school so they can advance. So we wanted this to almost look like a feeder program for the Hines manufacturing program. So I pulled one of these here. Let me see. Did you see that blue screen slide in? Perfect. All right. So this was developed by Kraft themselves, and it gives an overview, and it talks about the three main parts. I kind of reviewed some of this. Program details, talk about Madison, Ohio, that Costin, Ohio, Fremont, Ohio, and they ended up selling on Westchester, Virginia plant because they didn't have a union, and they welcomed the students more easier than the union wanting to. I don't want to say making it hard for them, but it was just an easier transition. And then we talked about, here's just the pathways. Here was the presentation that we gave to the student body. And then here was just some conversations that the students were able to ask questions and get more detail. And it was a very rewarding process for me. And I would also speak for Mr. Hurd in terms of just seeing the kids grow, seeing the kids learn, and seeing them take pride. So now another partnership that we got out of Hines was a summer internship program, to where this program was geared towards students who are college bound. So we designed a 6-week summer paid internship where the kids went to the local office in downtown Pittsburgh. And then there's also a branch where they have like I don't know what to call it in terms of, it's like a kitchen where they test the products up in Wexford. So they did that, and then we did some community service in there, and that was just also another great experience of learning what the behind the scenes of what it is to be an executive in the program. And then here's a video where, a slide of where the gentleman came out. They gave him an award. This one, they do a tailgate for us every year just to kick the school year off. And it's just an all around good feel. Let me see what this other one is over here. I can share. Here is one where we were in the executive office. I want to believe this was probably the last day because we're dressed down a little bit. And then here's an example where they're in the actual plant, and we had to get permission to share this because Heinz is very secretive about their secret ingredients. And one thing that we learned is they manufacture their own tomatoes. The tomatoes that Heinz uses are only they call it genetically modified, especially for their ketchup. You can't buy it. You can't grow it your own. It all comes out of there. And this is just an example of a hands-on experience. This is an example when we went out and did some community service. This was an example where at the end, every one of the interns had to do a presentation on what they learned, what they knew about the product, and they actually were in the development of doing pitches for new products. So it was like, this one is jalapeno ketchup. I don't know if this one came out yet, but it probably is on the other side of the country. But it was a great experience to see the kids develop their skills on presentation and speaking in front of others, and it just brought out so much in the kids. And I showed you this picture already. So in my closing, my advice to any school or any program, you got to tap into your local resources. You got to tap into your alumni association. You probably have prominent alumni who have graduated and moved on to professional field. Celebrate those guys, make them feel, part of the family again. They'll bring their resources in. I was talking about every district has a professional relationship with the bank. They have a bus company. They have transportation. Copy any contractor that you have, reach out to those guys as well, because they want to lobby for your business. You can leverage that to get something out. My first year here, I raised $50,000 in scholarship money simply through the alumni. The next year, we went from alumni to partnerships. I got it to 75. This year, my target is $100,000 that I'm raising to give to the students for scholarship for college, career, independent living, individuals who have lost a loved one to tragedy, parents, military, nursing, you name it. And every year that is growing. And it's all driven by what the kids need, what they show that they're interested in. And then one thing that we always say is Macte Virtute, increase excellence. And then this slide here is like, when everyone's working together and everybody's working in the best interest, everybody can celebrate. In this picture here, I got school board members, I got a state senator, I got the head guy of Hines there, I got the mayor, and it's just a win-win when we all can work together and benefit our children. So this last slide here, I'll share just some links if you wanted to learn some more, but that concludes my presentation. Hopefully I didn't go over my time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Woods. That was awesome and inspiring, and it's great to hear that you're going to continue to build this out as time goes on and make it even more impactful. So I will turn it back over now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Woods, and thank you, Sam, for inviting them to be part of our group today. I think the message that he shared, along with what Gregg Behr shared, is just perfect for our discussions today. And I think in that spirit, since all of the great conversations that have been happening so far, I think we're going to stay focused on just the community outreach. So we've done some breakout rooms in the different components in the past. I think we're going to kind of skip that part of our agenda today, but also offer the opportunity right now with the whole group setting here, if anybody had any questions for Dr. Woods or the team about that. So feel free to post them into the chat if you had any questions, or were so brave as to come off of mute and want to ask the questions directly to the team here. But as you're thinking about that, we're also going to kind of give you just an opportunity to understand the rest of our time here together. We're going to talk a little bit about site visits, this experiential learning that was shared so much today. We want to continue to increase that. We want to show and showcase what's happening within our schools by giving you the opportunity to go to these places and see them in person, because it's such more of a powerful experience when we can do that in person as opposed to just doing it in the virtual setting as we're doing it today. So again, if anybody has any questions for Dr. Woods, or anybody from our team has a question for Dr. Woods, feel free to ask it at this time.
I put a link to my presentation in the chat. If you go to that last slide there, it will take you to some links if you wanted to learn more, and just to share how the partnership has blossomed. So yeah, if there's any questions.
Yep. And I see one here, Dr. Woods, for you in the chat. What did you say, Dr. Woods, to an anxious parent that changed their way of thinking?
So that my Mr. Hurd, are you still here, Mr. Hurd?
I am. I'm here.
So the question is, how did we make the parents feel more comfortable about making this transition? So would you like to speak to some of the meetings and what we did in terms of helping the parents and the families find housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
So we made sure that when we did it, we knew that some of our parents are going to be able to lack some of the resources of, the big move and where they're going and how are they going to get to work and what all of that is going to look like. So again, as you heard, Dr. Lewis, he's very good at making things happen. So he actually went home and he came back with like a map of like the bus route of like where the company is, right? And he's like, here go all the apartments on the bus route. Here go the bus stops, right? So he provided that. We got hands to provide, like you said, the moving money. So if they move, we got hands to provide that. We offer to actually go down with students and families to say, hey, this is the plan. This is where you're going to live. What do you need from us? So again, we were able to, through multiple meetings, any question or any fears that a parent had, we were able to come back to the table and say, okay, this is a concern, and then go back to Hines, address the concern, and get the need so the parents would feel very comfortable in doing that.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Hurd. And we have another question from Pam. She raised her hand.
Yeah. Hey, I love this story so much. It just really excites me. One of the questions that I had is, as you've had graduates that have moved on and are now into the adult world, are y'all able to track the stories and even maybe some of the data of what happens to kids as a result of having these experiences in terms of jobs or careers or college or all of those things that come afterwards? Just wondering about that.
When the students graduate, we do a survey, and it's part of the graduation requirement in terms of saying, okay, you're graduating, what is the career field, aka military, aka college, aka cosmetology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we do the initial tracking, and we do not have a formal process of, say, aka checking in. I would say uninformal. We go by social media and what we see. And to be honest, a lot of kids will report back, hey, I graduated. Hey, I'm getting my diploma. Hey, I moved here, et cetera, et cetera. But I definitely believe we could do a better job of that. So we can have, like you said, the hardcore data. But I can't tell you that I have a streamlined data source for your question, but it's definitely something we should do. Now, I can tell you in terms of this program, they started last year in August, and we started with 6 kids there, and one student dropped out, came home and they got homesick, but the other student had a boyfriend who she brought down and got him a job. So we still at 6. So that we're 100% right now.
That's great. I just have a belief that there are going to be some great stories coming out of kids' lives as a result of the experiences. And in one way or another, it's a great story to tell others about what's the impact, on kids beyond high school. And I bet it's there.
In this particular situation, the impact, if they see it through, is life changing, because we're going to have these young people coming out of high school, and I don't want to sound tongue in cheek, but they coming out of high school with a high school diploma, going into this program, generating more money than both of their parents combined. That's life changing in itself, and not only getting the professional skill, but giving us the feedback so that we can redefine the program so that we can get more students involved. So it's like I said, we're still in the infancy stages because we're just completing the first year, but I like what you mean in terms of writing a narrative so that it has a storyline. Thank you.
So again, thank you so much, Dr. Woods and Mr. Hurd, for sharing the story of Alliquipa, and we'll look for those follow-ups as we see the progress of your program. And for those of you that are joining us today, if there are similar programs that are happening in your area that you would like to spotlight, bring them to the attention of our team. These are the types of stories that inspire us and want us to go further and extend into our community. So the more of those stories we have to tell, we think the more progress we're going to see in these different areas.
And Tim, real quick, I see another question that was put in there. Said, do you
Sure, go
pair
ahead.
with driver's education, and how do you help students see that this could be their future? So we do not formally pair with a driver's education program. I think a lot of our kids probably had their licenses already, or were working on them. But how do we help kids see this as their future? Like Dr. Wood said, I mean, we simply put the money and the opportunity on the table. Most of our families live below the poverty level, and at 18, if you have opportunity to make $50,000 plus, I don't know what we're talking about, right? You get to leave an environment that is going to help you grow and build, and provide financial resources that can support yourself and or your family if necessary. So that was the easy part. The hard part was getting them to leave home.
Very much so. Thank you for adding that and answering that question in the chat there. And again, thank you so much to that team again for sharing this story. And when we talk about sharing of these stories, we're trying to grow this storytelling by doing some of these in-person site visits. So one of the persons on our team who's leading up this work is Christina Sanders, and I wanted to give her some time to share some of the exciting things that are happening around site visits around the state. Christina?
Thanks, Tim. The site visits I think, is so important to talk about. Excuse me. Whether it's going to visit a site or having your school host a site visit, I think is just a totally different experience to be able to see all of these different things in action in person, because you get to see and feel what it's like as a student that's going through the work, looking at the teachers and what they're doing in and seeing the administration kind of being on board with all of these. It becomes real and you can feel the energy behind all of the things that the school is doing, and you can really see the pride they take in what they're doing, what community connections they're making, to be able to support students in different ways. So one of the visits that I was able to host with our region was the Warren County site visit. And we got a chance to look at 3 different sites with their career and technical education program, their Strive Academy, and even their online services program. And it was just so interesting to see all of those different components within a very rural school district. So if you're thinking about hosting or going to see a site visit, if you're a small school, a big school, we encourage you to really dig into that opportunity to be able to share your journey and just showcase your school and your teachers and the students and all the hard work that they're doing, and showcasing those connections that you're making between schools. And something really positive that came out of that visit was just being able to share those connections, because some of the administrators that came ended up reaching out to the administrators at Warren, and they've been in contact with other things as well. So that it was a really neat opportunity. And there was another site visit that came up too in the Burrell School District. And I think Becky was going to talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. Thank you, everybody who came out to Burrell School District last week. We had 55 people join us at this site visit. It was one of the largest visits that we have put on to date for PASCL. In the chat, real quick, I am going to share the presentation that you see in one of the images there that the district administration put together for us, that kind of takes you through the journey that they have gone through in reevaluating sort of where they had been, where they wanted to go, and how they were getting there. And I would be remiss if I did not thank Amplify for sponsoring lunch, and if I also did not thank Remake Learning and the Pittsburgh Personalized Learning Network for also participating and cross-promoting the event so that we had as wide of a reach as possible in getting people to join us. They were all there as well. And it really showed the power of what we can do when we all kind of come together to say that putting students at the center of our work really, really can become impactful. Burrell spent the day with us. They opened up the entire district. We had 2 tours that actually occurred. And so the group was split into half. Some of us stayed at the high school and some of us went over and saw what was going on at the middle school and the elementary school. And it was just an incredibly immersive day of walking into classrooms and getting to interact with students and teachers, and then coming back together for an interactive lunch with a workshop with the administration so that everyone could see how to replicate the process in their own districts. If you go into the presentation, you will see how all of the work that they did aligns to the blueprint, but it also aligns to work that's coming out of the Personalized Learning Network and Remake Learning, and how all of those frameworks overlap and complement each other. It was truly, truly an amazingly powerful day. So thank you all so much to everyone that came.
All right. Thank you so much, Becky, for sharing that. So not only are these in-person site visits, a powerful resource for you to understand what's happening around the state. But we also have some PASCL sponsored events coming up relatively soon, but also looking ahead to the summer. So Kendi's going to share a little bit about what's coming up with PASCL. Kendi?
Hey, so one of our goals this year was really to continue to grow the network and create opportunities for us to connect in person, face to face. We had a lot of people join us at Hershey Hotel over the P&C at our lunch, which was awesome. We were so happy to see you. And then we have some things coming up as well, other in-person opportunities. So March 11th at Chester County IU, there's the Learning by Design Conference. And then we have 3 conferences happening across the state over the summer. So we've got a conference at Carbon-Lehigh IU. That's the coming together of Carbon-Lehigh IU, Berks IU, and Colonial IU. Anybody in that area is welcome to come join us. And I do believe that the information, yep, there's like links to all of these on the agenda that you can refer to. There's a Western PASCL Summit happening June 17th. And then IU 13, which is Lancaster-Lebanon, is having one July 28th. So we would love to see you in person. We've had the opportunity to connect all year virtually, and we would love to see you in person at any of these events that you may be interested in. All sponsored by PASCL. Back to you, Tim.
Thank you so much, Kendi. Again, looking forward to growing our network beyond just our 4 meetings that we have together today. We're always looking for ideas and your feedback as well for what you'd like to see in person in your area and what you'd like to see virtually. Also with that, as Ken had talked about the OER Commons, what resources are you searching out? What supports do you need? So please use the feedback form that's linked on our agenda. We're always open to your ideas as our team meets between our network meetings. We definitely value your feedback and looking for some different ideas moving forward with that. So, we added to that Padlet today. If some ideas have come about, we encourage you to continue to add to that Padlet. And the next time we're together, again, we're going to focus specifically on the idea of learning models. Specifically in April, we're really excited to have Dr. Laura Jacobs be our guest speaker to share with us the amazing work that's happening in her school district. But if you have a school district in your region too that you'd like to spotlight or share out, please bring them to our attention, and we'll continue to do that. So again, we really want to give a heartfelt thank you to everyone who came today, especially to our guest presenters and our district spotlights. The amazing work that you're doing I know has inspired me to think about ways that we can continue to grow this in our area. So I kind of want to leave you with the words that Gregg had shared with us about how might we take the next step to this? What are we going to do as we leave this meeting today? What conversations do we need to have with folks in our community as well in our district to take the next steps forward to creating this student-centered learning environment that we all strive for? So again, thank you so much for joining us today. We can look for a follow-up email from me. If you don't have these emails coming into your inbox, please use that registration form so you can get caught up with our monthly newsletters and get all the announcements sent directly to you. So again, thank you so much for being here today. We look forward to seeing you next time and throughout our in-person and virtual events. So have a great rest of your week, everybody. We'll see you next time.